Welcome to Focus Israel. Last week, Fredrik met the Swedish Christian Democratic parliamentarian Anneli Enochsson ahead of her trip to Israel, together with other parliamentarians and representatives from the Sweden-Israel Friendship Association. I recently met with her here in Jerusalem to ask what the group has seen so far. Anneli Enochsson, du pratade med Fredrik förra veckan eller inför din resa hit till Israel lite om dina ambitioner med resan. Känner du att resan har motsvarat dina förväntningar hittills?
Ja, det har den gjort. Vi började idag med att få en briefing, alltså en genomgång av situationen i landet med våran ambassadör Bonnier nere i Tel Aviv. Sen åkte vi därifrån till Sderot och såg på de här Kasama-raketerna och hur man liksom gör för att försöka kunna leva normalt. Och det går ju inte att leva normalt, men hur man ändå försöker överleva i detta samhälle. Sen åkte vi ner till Kerem Shalom och tittade på gränsövergången. Och vad man hör i Sverige, det är ju att man säger att det finns, det är alltså en ockuperad zon, säger man, i Gaza. Och att det inte släpps in av varor. Vi har ju sett att det är en zon som styrs av Hamas. Det är inte en ockuperad zon, utan det är Hamas som ockuperar så att säga sin befolkningen där. Och också då att man ser att varor går in. Väldigt mycket av varorna är ju bekostade av UNRWA och väldigt mycket av medlen kommer från Sverige. Vi ger ju 700 miljoner per år i bistånd, bland annat till de palestinska myndigheterna. Så väldigt mycket av de sakerna som går genom den stationen där nere har ju kommit ifrån Sverige.
Tack. Lars-Arne Staxäng, moderat riksdagsledamot. Det är din första resa här till Israel?
Den första resan till Israel, och det känns väldigt spännande eftersom det här landet står för så väldigt mycket. I min kristna tro exempelvis så har jag redan från barnsben vetat vad Jerusalem, Betlehem och alla de här städerna är. Så det är helt fantastiskt.
Mm. Hur känns det för dig att som riksdagsledamot i dagsläget när medieklimatet är så hätskt och rapport efter rapport lanseras där Israel anklagas för att stjäla vatten från palestinier, för att medvetet mörda barn i Gaza. Hur känns det att i ett sådant medieklimat ändå välja att presentera sig som någon som stödjer Israel?
Jag tycker att det känns riktigt att åka med på denna resan. Jag är inte ens med i föreningen ännu. Jag kommer att gå in i det här. Och jag är en av 4 parlamentariker som är med. Alltså 4 riksdagsledamöter ifrån Sverige som är med. Och jag vill alltid i frågor se båda sidorna. Höra argumenten. För jag tycker den har blivit så snedvriden i Sverige. Och det jag har sett hittills så känns det väldigt bra. För min önskan det är att palestinerna och israelerna ska kunna få bo intill varandra i fred. Och när man säger att den ena staten eller det andra folket inte ska få lov att existera, vilket man till och med diskuterar och har i barnfilmer och så vidare. Den debatten har vi inte i Sverige. Och den är viktig att vi tar den diskussionen. Hur når vi så att folk börjar prata med varandra igen? Jag känner att det är en viktig fråga.
Tack så mycket för att ni ville vara med i Fokus Israel. Mm. The trip of the Swedish parliamentarians coincides with the Yitzhak Rabin Memorial Day, which according to the Hebrew calendar is observed today. The Memorial Day is observed every year here in Israel. This past week, the news here in Israel has otherwise been dominated by the negotiations with Iran about the future of its nuclear energy program. I recently spoke with Gil Troy about this, a professor of history at McGill University. Last week, Iranian negotiators were presented with a deal in which Iran would agree to transfer 75% of its known stock of enriched uranium to Russia. It is believed that this would significantly slow down any covert nuclear weapons program that Iran might have. Do you think that the Iranian leadership will accept this deal?
It's hard to know exactly what the Iranian leadership will do, but it seems that they're open to accepting the deal because they're following the North Korean cues, which is say yes to the West, try to look nice, try to make a big deal about the fact that you're making a huge concession, and then once you've made the concession and made the agreement, continue rushing toward going nuclear.
Do you think it is possible for Iran and the West to reach an agreement that is acceptable for Israel and that permanently diffuses the situation?
During the days of the Shah of Iran and Israel had very good relations. And I think that if the Iranian people rose up, as they tried to do in June, and created a new regime that was not so radical and not so Islamist, it would be possible for great peace between the Iranians and the Israelis. And I think there's warmth between the Iranian people and the Israeli people. Unfortunately, what you right now have in Tehran is an ideological regime. And as long as that regime continues to deny the Holocaust, as long as that regime continues to disparage the state of Israel, as long as that regime continues to fund terror and mayhem, I think it'll be very hard to find any kind of accommodation that will make Israel comfortable.
So how do you currently see the negotiations?
Well, I'm a cautious optimist, despite my concerns, I would say. I'm optimistic because I have watched the Iranians over the last 20 years, and since the Iran-Iraq war, the Iranians have been very cautious and have not risked their own people. They've been very effective international players by using proxy warfare through Hezbollah and through Hamas. So I don't worry necessarily about them waking up one morning and destroying the world. What I do worry about, and this is where the caution comes in, is that they are committed and they thrive on the chaos. They are committed and thrive on the terrorism. And as long as they continue on this path of terrorism and delegitimization, it'll be very hard to find some kind of accommodation. And ultimately, I think it hurts the Iranian people. We've seen how much they're suffering. We've seen how they're suffering economically. We've seen how the regime has turned on its own. We've seen how the regime has brutalized the children of some leading clerics because they dared to disagree. And the question becomes, what kind of agreement can you accept from people like that? This was the challenge in the Cold War too. These people are dishonest. These people will murder their own. How do you trust them not to murder you?
The historian Bernard Lewis is known to have said that while the idea of mutually assured destruction was a deterrent for the Soviet Union during the Cold War, it's actually an incentive now for Iran due to Iran's apocalyptic worldview. Do you agree with this?
Historian Bernard Lewis is a very shrewd observer of the Arab world and of the Muslim world, and he understands the eschatological, the messianic impulses in Islam far better than I, and I have tremendous respect for him. I see that there's a strain in the Iranian leadership, and I see there's a strain in Iranian rhetoric which seems to be pushing for doomsday. But on the other hand, I also think that there's a strain in Iranian foreign policy which is far more pragmatic, which has discovered since the devastation of over 1 million dead during the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s that you can make a lot of progress in the international arena. You can make a lot of trouble, which is what they like to do, by using proxies. In the last 20 years, they have not risked the hair on the head of one Iranian. And that makes me sense that perhaps the challenge is less the doomsday scenario where one day the Iranians are going to wake up and say, we want to lose Tehran, let's wipe out the Jews in Israel, but more the continuing pressure that will come if there's an Iranian bomb on Israel, on the United States, on Europe, on democracies, because you'll now have another player with a bomb. And of course, the other great fear if Iran has the bomb is how do we make sure that they don't somehow pass the bomb on to another player like Al-Qaeda that is less responsible, or that so far has behaved less responsibly.
What do you think will happen in the coming weeks?
Judging by the Iranian approach of the last couple of years when it comes to dealing with the West, I think what we're going to see is a lot of play acting on the part of the Iranians. What a difficult decision this is. Should we go in? Should we not go in? They're going to go into some kind of agreement with the West, most probably. And then my guess is that despite the agreement, they will continue rushing willy-nilly toward developing that bomb, because they have shown that they are deeply committed to that. And I think this is a real interesting test for Barack Obama's foreign policy. I think this is a real test to see whether President Obama can bring home the bacon, as they say, can deliver. We saw that President Clinton was able to, through the good offices of Jimmy Carter, deliver a deal with North Korea. It was lovely. It made people feel good, and it wasn't observed. And it was broached again and again and again. And I just hope that Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and his national security team are not as naive as Bill Clinton was at that moment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, on a lighter note, the Hebrew Language Academy has asked for the public's assistance in finding Hebrew names for the planets Uranus and Neptune. The other planets in our solar system have Hebrew names since Talmudic times. The public can choose between two alternatives for each planet, alternatives that have been chosen from the over 650 suggestions that the Academy has received. Oron and Shahak for Uranus, and Rahav and Tarshish for Neptune. Voting can be done on the website astronomy2009.org.il until November 30th. My name is Paul Whedon, and that's all from Focus Israel for today. See us again next week.